Hello everybody, thanks for watching that 80s Pastor Dude. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, ring the little bell so you know when I have new videos out. Leave comments or suggestions down in the comment section, and check me out on Facebook and X. It's the end of the year, so it's time to do some top 10 list. I sat down a couple of days ago and tried to weed out my top 10 favorite albums of the year, and at one point I had well over 20. And then I got it down to 21. And I just decided I couldn't narrow it down to 10 albums. So what I've done is I've separated into two lists. I have 10 albums from Christian artists or that have predominantly Christian themes or somehow connected to the Christian music industry, whether they're explicitly Christian or they are Christian and right from a biblical viewpoint. So I've got 10 albums that kind of fall into that category that aren't necessarily CCM. And then I have 10 albums that are not from a Christian viewpoint, although as I look at two of them are from a guy that professes faith in Jesus, and he is a Christian, but these albums were not meant for the Christian market, and I'll get to those in just a second. I'm just going to do these all in one video instead of making two different videos. And I'm just going to kind of go through them. These are not ranked in order. I'm just going to mention them. There's not going to be a lot of commentary because I don't want this video to be incredibly long. I may come back and do individual videos after the new year where I talk about some of these albums. Honestly, a couple of these on both lists I just recently got into over the last 2 or 3 weeks. There are some of these that I've been listening to ever since they came out, and a couple of them that I just have now gotten into over the last couple of weeks. But that's how good they are. That's how much of an impression they made on me that they bumped some other albums off. So we're just going to start with the top 10 non-Christian albums, and once again, these are not in any kind of order. Although this first one is probably my favorite on this list, and it may be one of my favorite albums of the entire year, because it's one of my favorite bands. It's the band Extreme and their new album 6. These guys are a melodic hard rock, groovy. I've been a big fan of this band ever since they came out. So that's probably one of my favorite albums all year. I just love it. The next one is All Hell's Breaking Loose by the British band Raven, who have been around since the 70s. I got a chance to see these guys last year. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal, and these guys were an influence on bands like Metallica and Megadeth, and they're still making music, and this is their newest one. It's a trio, drums, guitar, bass. The guy singing still has his voice, and this is just a straight up heavy metal album. Love it. Looking forward to seeing them in the new year. They're going to be playing not too terribly far from here. Next up is one that I just got into in the last week or so. It's Peter Gabriel's new album, I.O. And it's interesting because it's a very long album. It's a double album. The first disc has a group of songs, and I only did some minimal research. And now I'm forgetting. One side is the dark side and one side is the light side. But it's basically 2 discs. And it's the same songs on both discs, but they've been recorded differently. And one is the dark side and one is the light side. But it's the first Peter Gabriel album in over 20 years of new material. And I just recently got into it, but I really, really dig it. I just listened to it this afternoon, and it's well over 2 hours when you listen to it. But that's a good one. I highly suggest that. Next up is Sweet and Lynch, Heart and Sacrifice. This is their third album. It's Michael Sweet from Stryper and George Lynch from Dokken. And this is one of those that I said has a Christian band member in it. But this is not written for the Christian industry. If you know anything about Dokken, they were from that LA hair metal scene. So were Stryper. But Michael Sweet and George Lynch have been writing and recording songs together now for a few years. And their new one is Heart and Sacrifice. Really, really good album. Next up is Mammoth WVH, which is Wolfgang Van Halen. It's Eddie Van Halen's son. This is Mammoth 2. It's his second album. He plays all the instruments. He does all the singing. This is just really good, solid modern rock. The first album was incredible, and this new one continues on the same line. Next up is a band I'd almost forgotten about. I love their first album, and I didn't even realize they were still together. And this one popped up in my recommendations, but it's the newest album from the Polyphonic Spree called Salvage Enterprise. And if you know anything about them, it's very melodic, kind of trippy and psychedelic. Lots of good vocal hooks and harmonies and melodies. Really, really good Beatle-esque psychedelic music. Next up is the newest one from the Foo Fighters, but here we are. First album since Taylor Hawkins passed away. And if you can say anything about Foo Fighters, is they are consistent. Dave Grohl is a great songwriter, a great frontman, and this is a really, really good album. Number 8, Juliana Hatfield has been around for a while. I remember when she was in a band called Blake Babies. Then she had Juliana Hatfield 3, and then she went solo, and I hadn't really paid much attention, but a friend sent me this. It's Juliana Hatfield Sings ELO. It's an entire album of ELO covers, and she does justice to each and every one of them, and it has jumped up near the top of my list of favorite albums just because ELO is my favorite band, and she really does a good job. Soul Driver is another album featuring Michael Sweet. It's Michael Sweet and an individual that is a studio songwriter for Frontiers Records, whose name just totally escaped me. But this is more melodic hard rock, features Michael Sweet on vocals. This is less heavy and more, I would kind of put it along Journey type stuff, but really, really good melodic hard rock if you like that stuff. And then lastly is Life is But a Dream, the new album from Avenged Sevenfold, who in my opinion are one of the best new heavy metal bands. They always try some different things on their albums, and this one does the same thing, but it's consistent. In my opinion, they haven't put out a bad album, and this is not a bad album either. So that's my top 10 non-Christian ones, even counting the fact that Michael Sweet's in there twice. And then my top 10 albums from a Christian viewpoint, or that are somehow connected with the Christian industry. Ronnie Martin just released I'm going to call it a Christmas album. It's called Holiday Fables. If you don't know who Ronnie Martin is, he was the mastermind behind Joy Electric, his brother, Starflower 59, and Ronnie Martin has put out great pop music. He's also an author. He's a pastor, and this is a really, really good album. I highly suggest it. You can listen to it outside of the Christmas season, and it still fits. It's just a really, really good album. Check it out. Next up is Neil Morse, who was originally the singer for Spock's Beard. He's a prog rock guy, and this is his newest one. It's apparently part 1 of a rock opera called The Dreamer, and it's a story of Joseph. And if you know anything about Neil Morse or Spock's Beard or any of the other groups that he is connected with, it's heavy prog. Dream Theater is kind of similar to this stuff. Maybe this is not quite as heavy, but Neil Morse has a really cool voice. He plays keyboards, he plays guitar, and he always has incredible musicians playing with him. So I'm looking forward to hearing part 2 of this. Next up is Project 86 Omni Part 1. These guys are just incredible. I have loved everything that they have put out. I honestly thought that they were disbanded and not around, and then they started releasing some tracks, and then they released this new album. And if you like Project 86, and even though I don't like the category, if you like that new metal kind of stuff, you need to check this out. Kind of the oddball on both of these lists is the newest one from Bruce Cockburn, O Sun, O Moon. This guy is just an incredible songwriter. This is more singer-songwriter acoustic stuff, but his lyrics are introspective, his lyrics are smart, and his lyrics are challenging from a faith-based viewpoint, and I absolutely love this record. This one may be my favorite on this particular list right here, even though it is so different. Next up is NF Hope, his new album. This guy is just, I know I'm an old guy, and it's going to sound corny for me using younger people's slang, but this guy's just fire. This is a great album. Check it out. And then another rap album is Flame. His new one's called Freedom Lessons. He's an interesting guy. He was really big in the Christian hip-hop community, him and Trip Lee and Lecrae. And then a few years ago, he went to seminary, and he converted to Lutheranism, and he's put out some albums where he actually corrects some of the theology in his earlier records. This guy is straight up Lutheran. That's the only way I know how to put it. Theologically sound. I like his presentation. Sometimes he has these little spoken word sermonettes on his albums, but he's in the Word. This guy's got a master's degree. He's smart, and he puts out some catchy music. Next up is Citizens. I Can't Find the Edges of You. I've liked these guys ever since they were Citizens and Saints, and every album they put out is a winner for me. There's a special edition of this on Spotify, which you have the regular album. Then there's a bunch of, they say acoustic, but they're not entirely acoustic. They're kind of mellowed versions of the same songs and a couple of live tracks. But if you know anything about Citizens and you like them, you should check this one out. Caves from Need to Breathe is my next one. Another band that is incredibly consistent. I do not believe they have put out a single album that I didn't like. I've never heard a Need to Breathe song that I thought was terrible. And once again, it's consistent. If you like Need to Breathe, you'll like this. Skeleton Psalms by Disciple is an absolutely killer album. First time I saw Disciple was in 1996. They were an unsigned band playing in Knoxville, Tennessee. Lead singer Kevin is the only one left from that original lineup. But these guys have evolved and they have changed throughout their years. And this is just a really, really good, solid hard rock metal album. Highly recommend it. And then lastly, another modern, I call them metal. Some people might not call them that. But the new album from Red, Rated R. First saw these guys at King's Fest up at King's Dominion in Virginia. And it was when they were doing, I'm trying to remember which album it was now, Release the Panic. And I've liked everything they've done since then. This is kind of a return to form to their earlier stuff. Really aggressive. Killer vocals, killer guitars, killer grooves. So that rounds out my top 10 Christian albums. So there you have it. My 20 favorite albums of the year. What do you think about my choices? Are there any glaring omissions, albums that I missed that perhaps I need to go back and check out? Leave those comments down below. Let me know what you think. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Do me a favor and like this video, subscribe to this channel. And once again, come check me out over on Facebook and X. Hope you have a great new year, and I look forward to seeing you in 2024 and releasing some new comments, or some new content, not comments. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm Lee. I appreciate you watching, and I'm done.